The all-new Taos is VW's latest effort to establish themselves in the SUV market. And it's interesting. In some areas, it's class-leading, but in others, it just leaves me wondering what Volkswagen was on when they designed this. Still, this thing probably deserves your attention, so stick around and I'll show you why. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and consider hitting the bell. That way you get high quality content and I get closer to making this my career. You can also follow me on Instagram. Thank you. Now back to the review. I'm gonna apologize for this beforehand. We have an obscene amount of cicadas here and they are making recording anywhere quite noisy. The first thing I thought when I saw the Taos was that it looks pretty good. I mean, this is all subjective, so tell me what you guys think, but up front you get a bold mix of Tiguan and Atlas, and the sharp lines kind of just pronounce its presence, and it's complemented with standard LED headlights and this standard black trim. Even if you get the base model, it doesn't look too bare bones, which I really like. Something that I don't like is that you only have 6.6 inches of ground clearance with the Taos. It's truly a replacement for the Golf hatch here in the United States. Now, one of the weirdest things with this Volkswagen is packaging. So you have 3 trims, S, SE, SEL, simple enough. Now the pricing can get ridiculous. You can get a Taos for 24 grand. However, a Taos SEL, which has the same engine, can top 34 grand if you choose a fancy color and a sunroof. With front wheel drive, if you're not crying yet, you can spend about 36 grand on an SEL all-wheel drive if you'd like. Still, that doesn't mean every Taos outprices the competition. In fact, VW offers a no-brainer safety package for just under $1,000 on the S and SE trim. On top of adding all available active safety features, you get rain-sensing windshield wipers, auto high beams, and a leatherette-wrapped heated steering wheel. This can be on a 25 grand MSRP car. Regardless of the price, you will not get fog lights or front parking sensors, just rear sensors for the SEL and these functional vents. Around the side of the Taos, you have body-colored mirrors, 17-inch wheels on the base model, 18s on the SE and SEL. Hold for SEL all-wheel drive models, which roll on 19s. The side silhouette is more traditional SUV than some of its competitors, drawing heavily from the Tiguan, and I think it works with this footprint. Now let me know your thoughts and don't hold this against me, but I prefer this to the overly boxy look in the Jeep Renegade, which looks like a baby-faced guy in high school whose personality was his involvement in the junior ROTC. Real quick, I'd like to thank the kind people over at Royal on the Eastside for loaning me the Taoses used for this review. If you're looking for something new, used, or just plain cool, check them out. SE and SEL models also get a proxy key. However, with this keyless function, you do still have to press this button. There's no sensor on the inside of the door handle like on virtually all other VWs. And I'm glad to report that all models get roof rails. All right, I am speeding. At the rear of the Taos, you'll see a standard spoiler, standard LED taillights, these things which bring up a very interesting proposition. Who in the hell would have even thought these were real? Additionally, you're not going to be able to get a power rear gate with the Taos. Overall, the exterior of the Volkswagen Taos is clean, sharp, and distinctively VW. The interior carries on that theme too, and like its portly brother, the Atlas, the Taos holds one distinct advantage over all of its competition: size. Up front, the Volkswagen Taos isn't as different as the new ID.4, however, they are trying things that they haven't before, especially with this accented panel here. If you get the base model, I actually think it looks a little bit better because the texture is just kind of weird. But I like how they do try to break up the interior versus other models that they've had in the past. Where this thing starts to fall short is just some of the panel gaps, fit and finish is just not even as good as the Volkswagen Tiguan. Really, the cheaper materials start to shine through with these wiggly dials down here for the climate controls. I'm glad that they at least stray away from using a ton of piano black plastics in here, and I also do enjoy this shifter and leather shift boot combo. It accents the new steering wheel pretty well, which has a flat bottom and nice stitching. The overall look is more modern and more aesthetically pleasing than what I found in the Subaru Crosstrek, or even really the Hyundai Kona. But again, looks are opinion based, so tell me what you guys think. The digital cockpit display comes standard. Now you can upgrade to a 10-inch screen here, but I really don't see that as necessary. I mean, yeah, it would look better because it fill out the area a little bit more. However, this is highly configurable, very easy to use, and it looks good. The touchscreen over here is standard 6.5 inches, and that just looks base, especially the buttons surrounding it. However, if you upgrade to the SE, you'll get the 8-inch unit, and that looks more appropriate. All of them will come with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. I was quite impressed with the speed of both infotainment screens. It's not the most fresh looking, but it has the spirited responsiveness of me trying to keep cicadas from getting into the car. At least this, come on, man. The standard sound system is a 4-speaker unit, which is fine, but most will probably at least want the 6-speaker unit in the SE. There's also a Beats system that I haven't tested that's in the SEL, but I've heard things about that. Now when it comes to features, again, the Taos is weird. The SE trim will get heated seats, a wireless charger, 3 USB-C ports, that bigger touchscreen, and a few other goodies. Dual zone automatic climate control and leather seats are also standard on the SEL. Now these are personally my favorite seats. They are 8-way, power adjustable, heated CloudTech seats. They use interesting materials and grip very well and are wide, flat, and somewhat stiff, but that helps with fatigue in the long run. I found these to be comfortable. The elbow rests were also well placed and soft enough. SE and SEL buyers get remote start and wireless Apple CarPlay Android Auto. For those who have to have the top line SEL, you get that aforementioned safety and lux package standard, navigation, and ventilated seats if you opt for all-wheel drive. Base buyers get cloth seats, 2 USB-C ports, and no sunroof option. Now when it comes to storage, the Taos will not let you down. And when it comes to space, the Taos also excels. Now with myself in a comfortable yet not excessive position, I'm gonna hop in the back. In the back seat of the Taos, I have great room for my legs, my head. I have more than enough support for my thighs because this floor is super low. You're feeling no consequence back here to choosing the Taos over the Tiguan. And this is a big selling point for a car in this class. Additionally, if you get the SE trim, you'll have rear vents back here and that third USB-C port, which I should also mention, there is no regular USB port, so get some dongles if you need them. And there's also still a pretty healthy hump here in the center. But with your panoramic sunroof, soft leather elbow rest points, this is a pretty nice place to be on long trips. And it's always worth mentioning, VW has the most satisfying feeling lock, unlock, and door shutting experience in the car biz. Well, at least at this price point. I can't open it. The trunk of the Taos is where you notice that this vehicle is 9.5 inches shorter than the Tiguan, but I'm still pretty impressed back here, mainly due to the height. The length is where I was starting to notice difficulty putting in, say, my tripods that are huge, but you can fold the rear seats. You have a nice little ski pass-through thing. The trunk is one of the biggest selling points of this car in this class. The all-wheel drive model does have slightly less space, but regardless, compared to just about any small SUV with this footprint, the Taos is more practical and more spacious for passengers. It even shows up larger SUVs when you fold down the rear seats. Still, we need to have a hard conversation here about the price of the Taos. But first, let's ignore our problems and take it for a drive. At the soul of the Volkswagen Taos is an all-new 1.5-liter turbocharged engine. it uses something called the Miller cycle, which in short leaves the intake open longer and uses variable geometry turbo, which is supposed to make it more efficient when under light loads and improve responsiveness. It seemed to be pretty reactive in terms of passing power scenarios, but not for accelerating from a low speed. Power output is 158 horsepower and a beefy 184 pound-feet of torque. I'll hoon this thing and see what we can really get out of it here in a second. Now, this really was done for efficiency. With front-wheel drive, you get 36 miles per gallon. Now, here's the thing I've been waiting to mention. If you get the all-wheel drive model, it changes virtually the whole driving experience. Now, you do get the same engine. However, then you will swap out the current 8-speed torque-converted automatic for a 7-speed dual clutch. And you will have independent rear suspension. Yes, this model has a solid beam. Now, I'm going to take this on some rough roads and see how it handles, but the all-wheel drive model will get its own video just because it's going to be so different, so subscribe for that. With a light curb weight and a lot of torque, the front-wheel drive model should be quick for the class, but let's punch it to 60 to see how it stacks up in the real world. DA is about 2,500 feet. We're going to brake torque just a little bit. Interesting. I shut off traction control, yet it still kicked in. I tried it again to make sure that traction control was off and it still cut power. Either way, 8.3 seconds is decent. The engine feels very linear. At speed, lag is almost non-existent and the car feels naturally aspirated. Torque comes in gently at low RPMs and pulls well to 6,000 RPM. But at low speeds, it feels like the car needs smelling salts. It can take a second or two for the engine to really react. However, it's usually smooth. Sometimes the shift from first to second gear is a little rocky, and supposedly the dual clutch is more jerky, but I want to drive it before I say anything else. The 8-speed typically refuses to downshift unless quickly prompted, but peak torque comes in at 1750 RPM, so I never felt the need to manually downshift. This doesn't feel really spirited in any kind of way outside of just that kind of low-range grunt. So personally, I think this is the perfect engine for a car like this. Now, when it comes to steering, this is where I'm noticing a big difference between this and the Tiguan. This is very numb, even more so than the Tiguan. The Tiguan had a little bit more natural feeling to it. Now, both of them are very direct, but this just feels a little bit more dead. And the Tiguan handles road imperfections pretty well. It's certainly on the more stiff side. If you're comparing this to vehicles like the Subaru Crosstrek, which I would assume you probably are, the Crosstrek's more comfortable and feels a little bit more planted on roads like this. Now, the steering feels a little bit quicker than the Crosstrek. I'd like to see how the independent rear suspension changes things. This is still inspiring enough confidence for me to throw it on a back road, and it's preventing most harsh impacts from resonating through the cabin. So I can't say that this has done a terrible job. But it's a worthy note. Despite the more unsettling ride, it has just as much body motion and roll as other competitors. But on most roads, it's smooth. Its engine feels strong, and the visibility is great. I like that you can see some of the hood. I can visualize the appeal of the Taos driving dynamics. And it's quiet too. It insulates road noise well, wind noise is more pronounced, but far from offensive, and makes my 2011 Outlander sound like an O2 Miata. One small disadvantage it holds compared to many of its classmates is the lack of standard safety aids. It's not a big deal for me, but it is for many, and they're nice to have, especially adaptive cruise. So I'm not going to be the guy commenting, "I hate safety aids. Try learning how to drive. Why'd she take the kids?" In both the S and the SE trim, you have to opt. It's called IQ Drive. You have to opt for this package in order to get adaptive cruise control, and a lane centering functions. Now, at the very least, you do get blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert as standard with the SE, which is something that comes in a $1,000 package in the base trim. And as I said earlier, this is the most no-brainer package I've ever seen, because not only do you get the amenities like a heated steering wheel, rain sensing windshield wipers, high beam assist, you also get forward collision mitigation, adaptive cruise, blind spot monitoring, and rear cross traffic. So you can get all of that in the base trim for $1,000. That would set you back about 25 grand, or slightly more than a comparable-ish select trim CX-30 or the standard all-wheel drive Subaru Crosstrek. At that price point, the Taos makes sense. But I need to have a talk with VW about the SEL trim. For the cost of an SEL all-wheel drive, you could also get a loaded all-wheel drive CX-30 2.5 turbo, CX-5 Grand Touring, Forester Limited, RAV4 XLE Hybrid, or a damn Tiguan SEL, and have money left over in some cases. Am I trying to shit on the Taos? No, just the top trim. When you max out a Crosstrek, it is outclassed in some areas by a similarly priced all-wheel drive Taos SE. We really don't need that SEL. The only reason it could make sense was if VW pushed out a bunch of rebates, which isn't exactly the business model you want. This is a pretty easy-going car. When I heard about the rear suspension, I was expecting this thing to feel less substantial than what it really does feel like. Now, I'd still say that the CX-30 and the Crosstrek feel a little bit more rugged and ready for whatever you got to throw at them. And they still have an edge in ride quality. The VW has more comfy seats, way more space, better tech, and I've grown to love the look of the interior almost as much as the CX-30. Almost. But the CX-30 has a much higher predicted reliability. Since the Taos just came out, I scanned a lot of the Jetta's history, which was new for the 19 model year, and that had some issues with the 8-speed transmission grinding and growling when it came out, which had seemingly been fixed. And the 7-speed dual clutch has been a pretty reliable transmission for Volkswagen so long as you do the recommended servicing every 40,000 miles. Some electrical issues also persisted along with rattles and noises too. But these issues fizzled out when I checked out the 2020 model on Car Complaints, Cars.com, and Consumer Reports only showed data for 2019. I don't think the Taos is going to be super problematic, but if reliability is a top concern, some rivals definitely hold an edge. Overall, I enjoyed my time with the Taos. It provides a zing that many of its competitors can't match. It has style, segment-leading passenger and cargo space, crispy tech in all trims, great to reasonable fuel economy depending on the drivetrain, and an engine that feels more adequate than most in the class. Just maybe think twice before going with the SEL trim. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the review, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.